Rabbi say, so, we say Chasal Sidur Pesach. We're all familiar with this. We say it or sing it at the end of the Seder. However, it's noteworthy that this wasn't originally meant to be said at the Seder. This is the conclusion of the piyut that was or still said in the Yotzres of Shabbos HaGodel. The piyut, was written by Rabbi Yosef Toiv Elam, one of the earliest French Rishonim, who I think at least 2 generations before Rashi. And in this piyut, he goes through all the halachas of Pesach, beginning with Bedikas Chametz and Bir Chametz, and the entire program of the Seder. And at the end of all this, he says, Chasal Sidur Pesach Kihil Chasoi, Kechol Mishpatoi Vichul Chasoi, Kasha Ezachinu L'Sader Oisoi, Kain Nizkel Asoisoi, meaning this is the conclusion of the order of the halachas of Pesach, as all its rules and laws are. And then we pray and hope that just as we were privileged to lay out the order, so may we be privileged to perform it. So it would seem totally inappropriate to say this after the Seder, when we already did it all. And I couldn't really find who imported this piyut into the Haggadah and when this was done. It's interesting that the Baal HaTanya in his Haggadah, which is in the end of his Siddur, doesn't have the Chasal Siddur Pesach. So I'm not clear where it really comes from to say this after the Seder, but maybe the idea is that even after we did it all, we feel or should feel that it was just l'sader oisoi. We arranged everything in the right order, but we didn't fully do it. We're still hoping that we will really connect with the full meaning of these mitzvahs. And that's the kei niskela asoisoi. So it's really not over yet. Yeah, the Seder is really just the beginning. And that's what I want to talk about. What are we supposed to take away from Pesach? In the Sefer HaChinuch, in the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, mitzvah Chaf Aleph, he says, Mishoroshe mitzvah zoi, the roots of this mitzvah, is Masha Kosov b'mitzvah HaPesach, what I already wrote in mitzvah Hey, in the mitzvah of Pesach, ve'ein min hatema. Don't be surprised in Bo Lonu mitzvahs rabbois al zeh, that we have so many mitzvahs that came in order to instill in us the memory of Yetzias Mitzrayim, mitzvahs aseh, u'mitzvahs lo yisaseh, kihu yisoid gadol v'amud chazak b'soiraseinu u'be'emunasenu. Yetzias Mitzrayim is an important foundation, and it's a strong pillar in our Torah and in our Emunah. Valkein anu oimrim la'olam b'birchoseinu u'b'tfiloseinu zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. Lefi shehilanu ois u'moifes gomor b'chidush olam. It's a sign. It tells us about creation. It's a proof for creation. V'chiyesh Eloika kadmoin chafetz v'yochel. That is a God. He's a kadmoin. He always was, and he's chafetz v'yochel. He wants and he can. Poel kol hanimtzois el hayesh. He creates yesh me'ayin. V'osel lonu ve'ubiyodei l'shanoisam el hayesh sheyachboitz b'chol eis min hazmanim. He could change in the rules of nature. As he did in Mitzrayim, Sheshino Tivei Ha'olam B'Shvilenu. He changed the nature of the world B'Shvilenu for us. V'asalanu oisais mechudoshim g'dol v'atzum haloi zeh mishasek kol koifer b'chidush ha'olam. This silences anyone who denies creation. And it keeps the Emunah in Yedias Hashem. So, this is really what Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim is about. And the question is, does it say that to us? Do we connect with it? You know, we did all the mitzvahs that are Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. We did Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. But what effect does it have on us, on our worldview, on how we live and how we experience life? You know, on the pasuk, Anochi Hashem Elokecha Asher Hoitzeicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim Mibeis Avodim, the Ibn Ezra brings that Rabbi Yehuda Halevi asked him why HaKadosh Baruch Hu introduces himself as the one who was Hoitzeicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim, the one that took you out of Mitzrayim, and not as Asher Barasicha Ubarasi Esa'olam. I mean, Kodesh Baruch Hu created the world. Why would he introduce himself as the one who took us out of Mitzrayim? So in the Kuzri, in the first Maimer, Ois Chafei, he says that the reason is, he says like this. He says, Omar Moshe bePesach Dvorov El Paroi Elokei Ha'Ivriyim Shlachani Eilecha. The God of the Hebrews, because the story of the Avos was known amongst the nations. B'dabroi el kol adas b'nei Yisrael. He says, "Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher yitzisicha me'eretz Mitzrayim v'lo yomar ani boirei ha'olam u'boirachem." And so I, in my opening remarks to you, he says to the Melech Kuzor, when you asked me about my faith, I discussed Yetzias Mitzrayim, and he says, and that's because it's a davar shenisbarer lebnei Yisrael barishoina. It was something that Bnei Yisrael experienced personally at first. Al pira ois einehem, they saw with their own eyes. V'achar kach nimsar leish mipi ish b'kabola hadoim l'mareinai, and then it was transmitted from generation to generation through tradition, which is doime l'mareinai, which is equivalent to mareinai. So he's saying that nobody witnessed Brias Ha'olam. However, we did witness Yetzias Mitzrayim, and Yetzias Mitzrayim is tells us about HaKadosh Baruch Hu intervening in running the world and even changing nature. So that tells us about Brias Ha'olam. So also the Ramban in the Sefer Mitzvahs, in the first Mitzvahs Asay Sheshachach on Harav, he says that Anochi Hashem Elokecha is the mitzvah of Emunah, and he says that the foundation of our Emunah is Hoitzeicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim, because that tells us about creation also. And he says, that's the Yesod of Anochi Hashem Elokecha and Lo Yelecha. But the question is obviously that the Torah is for all times and for all generations, and the Ramban says that Nosan Haraya Al Zeh Yetzias Mitzrayim, that's the proof. The Chinuch says it's a Yesod Gadol v'Amud Chazak, and that it silences every koifer b'chidush ha'olam. I mean, the koifer could also deny Yetzias Mitzrayim, and b'nefoil ha'yesod neifel ha'binyan, if that's the foundation, and the foundation can be denied. So, I mean, he says, the Kuzri says that it's a davar shenisbar lebnei Yisrael barishoin al pi ra'os einehem v'achar kach nimsar ish mipi ish b'kabola hadoime l'ra'os einayim. However, we have to be honest that the miracles of Yetzias Mitzrayim are no longer present in our conscience, and it's not like that Kabbalah ish mipi ish is still so strong. I mean, many of us had no Kabbalah ish mipi ish. Even those of us that did have, I mean, over generations and generations and generations, do we really connect to it on that level of clarity, and that it could serve as a foundation for our whole relationship with Torah and with Emunah? So So, it's not really a kasha, within the text, but it's a problem, in real life. So I would say the Rashba and Chidushei Agodis and Brochus Daf Yud Beis, when he's discussing the Shita of Ben Zoyme that holds that Ein Mazkirin Yetzias Mitzrayim Li'Moisa Moshiach, he says, V'im Titoin Oleinu Mi Bittul Kriya Shema. How could Ben Zoyme hold like that? This is a bittul of Kriya Shema. Rotza Loimar. Yitzias Mitzrayim, Shehi Mitzvah Mi Mitzvah Satar, and part of Kriya Shema is Yitzias Mitzrayim, Zechias Yitzias Mitzrayim. So how does Ben Zoyme hold that a mitzvah mi mitzvahs haTorah will be discontinued in Yemois HaMashiach? Da, says the Rashba, she'eina kavona b'mitzvah zechiras Yitzias Mitzrayim, elo, she'nizkor b'peh, hanisim she'asa lanu Hashem Yisborach, she'hoitzionu miMitzrayim, achar heyoiseinu dalei hakoyach v'tachas sivlois melech v'am kosher. That's what we're meant to remember. The im haschira hazois, with this zechira, nikba benafsheseinu will instill in our nefesh, shehu hamashgiach v'hayochel shelo yimna'eu shum oinei Hashem shum tzad. So v'tia hakavona ahi yoisech hazokim ba'oises yoisech hazokim. Hatachlis ahu shamur b'hazkireinu kibutz am memushoch u'memoirot me'amim noiroim min ha'arotz etzerachokis mitzofun amuyam. So the Ramban, the Rashba is saying that the mitzvah, the essence of the mitzvah, Zechiras Yitzias Mitzrayim, is really that we should remember the miracles that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did, in order that we should instill within ourselves the emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's existence and in his ability and rotzen to intervene. And he says that, therefore, this mitzvah won't be bottled. La'asid lavai, we're going to be remembering the miracles of the final redemption, and that will be the kiyum of Zechiras Yitzias Mitzrayim, because Yitzias Mitzrayim is lav dafke Yitzias Mitzrayim. He says the miracles of Yitzias Mitzrayim, or greater miracles, and he says the miracles of La'asid lavai will be greater miracles, and therefore that's what we will be remembering. Okay, now, the Rabbeinu Bachye in the Choyves Halvovos and Sha'ar Bechina, he writes like this: V'hagdoilo shebetoivos, the greatest of all toivos that shehetiv b'hem haboyer la'odem that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave man, v'haraya hachazoka olav, and the big proof that he exists, he haTorah hanasuna l'Moshe Nevi'ah. V'heirois ha'oisois al yodoi. Yeah, the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu did wonders and miracles. V'shanois haminhogim v'hatzvoim. V'heirois ha'oisois hamoifsim hanoiroim kidei lahamin b'bari yizborach hu b'novi v'chulei. And now he says, V'im yevakesh odom bazman hazeh lirois mashu hu doime le'inyonim ahein. You see that the Choyves Halvovos was already struggling with, for how long can we remember Yitzias Mitzrayim the way we once remembered it? And how could it be a potent force in our life? He says, he says, V'im yevakesh adam bazman hazeh, lirois, mashu hu doime le'inyonim ahein, something that's similar to the miracles of Yitzias Mitzrayim. Yabed be'ein ha'emes. He should look take an honest look. Omdeinu bein ha'umais me'eis hagolos. How we are surviving between the umais since we went into Golos. V'sidur inyaneinu beineim, and how things are for us between the umais ha'olam. Im masha onu bilti maskimim imohen, in spite of the fact that we don't agree with them, b'seiser ubagoli. I mean, it's obvious that we're not on the same page, and therefore they don't really want us to have what we have. The person that will look at this, he will see ki in yonenu efshe sheyeh korov mi in yoneim. Our state of being could be similar to theirs, b'mezoinos u'betrofim, as far as having a parnasa, having what we need. Ve'efshe sheyeh toiv mi in your name. And maybe sometimes it's even better than what they have. B'yemei hamolchamois v'hatigrois. V'tire habeinoiniyim v'hakifriyim shebohem. Their middle class and their peasants. Torchim yoisim in habeinanim shebonu. They work harder than our beinanim. V'hadalim hashem, even the poor people amongst us. K'moish yiftichanu yisreinu yizborach. As HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised us in the Parshas B'chukoisai, Va'av gam zois, v'hiyoisam be'eretz oiveihem, loy ma'astim, v'loy ga'altim l'chaloisam, l'hafer brisiitam. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu will not annul his covenant. He will not break his relationship with us. Va'amar Ezra, ki avodim anachnu, u'ba'avduseinu lo yazavonu elokeinu. V'nemar, lulei Hashem shohoy alonu b'kum aleinu adam, v'shah ha'mizmar. Actually, about this pasuk, the Ramban also says, the Ramban says in Parshas Kisavoi, Achar heyoseinu begolus ba'aretz Yisrael. He says that the Teichecho is about the exile itself, but he says Achar heyoseinu begolus ba'aretz Yisrael loy niskalalu ma'aseh yadeinu. Our ma'aseh yadayim are not cursed. V'loy karmeinu v'zeiseinu. It's not cursed. Aval anachnu ba'arotzos kishar ha'amim yoshvei ha'oretz hahi. We're as good off as the other people. Oy betoiv mehem, or maybe sometimes even better off than them. She rachamov oleinu. So it could be that according to the Rashba, we could be mekayim the zchira of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Not only with the nisim of La'asid Lavai, but also with being mizbainen in the miracle of Jewish survival through the Golus. And that is something that we can really connect to in a real way, because that's something that we can see, and that can bring us to the emunah in Yetzias Mitzrayim, and to understanding that the Klal Yisrael is different and has a special destiny and has a special mission and that has a special Ashgocha Eloikis. So that is really part of the Schiris Yetzias Mitzrayim. You know, the Rabbeinu Bachye wrote this in I think 1060. Yeah, it's a long time ago. But from then until now, you know, it's what Rabbi Yaakov Emden writes in his the Hagdama to Siddur. He writes, "Miha Iver, who's the blind man? She'eino roye, kishur olam hatachten be'elyon, hasoymech umamid ve'eini hashgachosei aleim tomid. Eich lo yevosh hakofer b'hashgoche." How can somebody that denies hashgoche, how could he not be embarrassed? V'yamid nichlam. Misha ya'ayin beyichud in yonenu uma'amodenu ba'olam. Somebody that will look into our unique state in this world. Anachnu ha'uma hagdoila sep zura. We're dispersed all over the world. Acha kol ma she'over aleinu mehatzorois va'atmurois alofim me'ashonim. Ve'ein uma ba'olam nirdefes kamoinu. Ma rabim hoyu tzorenu. Otzmu, nosu roish, hakomim aleinu minu ureinu lahashmidenu, la'okreinu l'shoshenu, b'pnei asina, shesibasa hakina, rabas tzirarunu, gam lo yochlu lanu, la'abdenu l'chalisenu. And he says, kolo umais hakdumais, ancient nations, ha'atzumais, ovad zichram, bottle sivram, sort silam, they're no longer. V'onu adveikim b'Hashem Elokeinu, this is not one ois from the Torah is missing. Ma yana philosoph charif. What will an astute philosopher be able to answer? Hayad hamikre osasa kol eile. Could this all be a coincidence? Chein afshi, he says. Yeah, I swear that keep his boinani beneflois eile. That when I think about these wonders, Godlu etzli yoisem mikol nisim v'neflo shos Hashem yisborach Mitzrayim ubamidbar uberetz Yisrael. In other words, he says that these nisim are greater than the nisim of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So just like the Rashba says that the nisim of loss is lovely, These nisim are also greater. He says, V'chol mashe orach hagolus yoiser. The longer the golus goes on for, so nisames hanes yoiser. Yeah, we see even more clearly this nes. V'noida mase tokvayu gvurasei. And it's not just about the good; it's about the bad too. As we mentioned many times from the Sforno in the beginning of Parshas Re'eh, that says Re'eh anoichi noisen lefneichem hayoim bracha uklola. So he says that you should habito Re'eh sheloi iyia in yoncha al oifen beinoini. Your situation will never be regular, will never be normal, will never be average. Like it is with other nations. It's two extremes. The bracha is success more than necessary. Al derech hayoser toiv. V'haklala hi me'era mechaseres shelo yusag hamaspik. You won't have what you need. Ushnehem lefnechem lahasig kefi masha tivkaru. So it's really the good and the bad both show that Klal Yisrael is mushgach with a special hashgacha, that we're not regular, we're not normal. So this is really something that, if you think about in our times, I mean the Sinas Yisrael that you see all over the world, which is really so irrational, and how people are so get so involved, mamish, like a oilam hafuch ra'isi. You see, like upside down thinking. But this is really our situation. May oz umay oilam. I mean, we have it better than everyone. The Jews are more successful, and at the same time, we have it worse than everyone. So that's all part of that's all part of what we could be misbinding in order to be mechazik our emunah. It's interesting that the Ramban in Parshas Boy uses it would seem like he's using the psukim that the Gemara brings for Ben Zoyma. The lo yei omer oid, you will not say anymore Chei Hashem Ashehela from Mitzrayim, but you will be talking about the miracles of Kibbutz Goliath. The Ramban uses, it would seem, that pasuk in order to explain how come, in spite of the fact that he learns there's a mitzvah to count the months from Nisan, nevertheless, we no longer do that because we gave the months names. So he says those names came from Bavel, and since those names came from Bavel, it reminds us of the Geula of Bavel, and he brings the pasuk V'lo yeh omer oid. So I already told you that really there are two psukim. There's one pasuk in Kapitel Tes Zayin and one pasuk in Kapitel Chav Gimel. The Gemara is bringing the pasuk in Kapitel Chav Gimel. The Ramban is bringing the pasuk in Kapitel Tes Zayin. The Ramban is learning that the pasuk in Kapitel Tes Zayin, which is also the pasuk that he brings in his drasha for Rosh Hashanah, is not referring to Yemois HaMashiach, it's referring to Geulas Bavel. And whereas the pasuk in Chav Gimel, which over there it says Atzmiach Semach LeDavid, is obviously talking about the Geula of La'asid Lavai. But the shocking thing is, how does the Ramban hold that remembering the Geulas Bavel can compensate for Zechiras Yitzias Mitzrayim? The Mela, the La'asid Lavai, there'll be greater miracles than there were at the time of Yitzias Mitzrayim. But Geulas Bavel, was B'derech HaTeva, was Berishia Neumas. Koresh gave Rishus to build the Beis Hamikdash. I mean, the Gemara says in Brachas Avdalad, Yisrael, but it didn't happen, right? So Klal Yisrael did not experience Nisim when they came back to Eretz Yisrael the second time. So how could the Ramban say that remembering our redemption from Bavel is equivalent, or maybe even greater, than Yitzias Mitzrayim? Do you know the Kedushas Levi has a group of Kedushas Kedusha Rishona, Kedusha Shniya, Kedusha Shlish is about Nisim. And over there he writes that the reason that, Chazal say that Kol HaMoyadim Yiu B'Telim, but Yemei HaPurim will not be bothered. So he says that the pshat is like this because all the Moyadim are Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim. Yetzias Mitzrayim is about HaKadosh Baruch Hu breaking the rules of nature. But Purim, he says, is even greater because it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu operating within the rules of nature and saving Klal Yisrael b'derech hateva. And that's a greater thing than breaking the rules of Teva. And therefore, says the Kedushas Levi, that Purim, which was a nes that all happened within the derech hateva, that will be kayom even la'asid lavai, because the whole ma'ila of la'asid lavai, he says, is that the world will come to a point where the Yeshua will come b'derech hateva, and therefore Purim will be remembered la'asid lavai as opposed to the other moyadim, which are all based on Yetzias Mitzrayim. So you see that really as we are expected to mature, like the Ramban says in the end of Parshas Boy, that mitoich hanisim agdolim v'hamefursamim adam makir in the nisim nistorim, we're expected to see the Rebbeinu Shalom within the natural world and within events that happen that seem to be b'derech hateva. And that's so it could be that what the Ramban is saying, that Geulas Bavel is also, in a sense, brought about a veloye amer oid, that we no longer need to talk about Yetzias Mitzrayim. We talk about the Geulas Bavel. We named the Chadashim after the Geulas Bavel, is because, in a sense, the Geulas Bavel is greater than the Geulas Mitzrayim, dafka because it was not with Nisim Gluyim. So the point is that the what we take away from Pesach is really the hisbonenus in that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Borei Ha'olam umanhigoi hu levadoi osa v'oise v'yasa l'chol ha'maisim, and that we have a unique mission and destiny, and that we should embrace it, and we should try to live up to the expectations that the Rebbeinu Shalom has from us. Yo, Rabbi Sai, I want to wish you all a good Shabbos.